They say that India's identity was forged in the link between gods and humanity. At times, these divinities have taken different forms and have been invoked by prayers inspired by everyday life. Yet within the pantheon of Hinduism, one of the principal gods is Shiva, master of destruction and reproduction, the supreme yogi. His cult gave birth to Shivaism, a branch of Hinduism that obeys teachings which have been passed down through the centuries within these mysterious manuscripts. These sacred texts are studied at the French Institute of Pondicherry in southern India. A team of Indologists watch over the precious collection. Over 8,000 manuscripts are stored within this library. They were gathered by scientists over the 30 years following the founding of the Institute. Each manuscript is made of assembled palm leaves, covered in handwritten inscriptions whose origins date back to the 4th and 5th centuries. Among these is the cornerstone of Shivite teaching, the Agama.
Agama is a huge corpus of literature texts that deal with the particular aspect of God, religion, and philosophy, incorporating yogic methods, mantra, meditation, worship, both external and internal, as well as temple, public worship. According to this Agama, Shiva is the highest God, supreme God, the only God. And these Agama texts were revealed by Shiva to various divinities, then to sages. So thus the religious practices and the philosophical yoga are practiced by the human being to attain the highest supreme good. Om Gaum Gauri Murtaye Namaha. Om Hrim.
The Sanskrit gracing these thin pages composes the combined teachings of the Agama. Through them we find traditional dogma, the description of rituals, and the code of conduct for the faithful and for yoga. Unfortunately, high humidity in these regions quickly causes such manuscripts to deteriorate. Over the centuries, each generation has created new copies to ensure their traditions can carry over into the next generation. Old copies were destroyed to make space for the new, meaning that these manuscripts date back only to the 18th century. Among one of the rarer examples, the copyist left an artistic flourish.
This text deals with the story of Ramayana, and it is a poetic piece. The poet shows his ability, poetic ability, various embellishments. Some of the scenes connected with the story, they are drawn on the sides. That is what we find here. The forest with the wild animals, the demons sometimes they are drawn. Then Rama, Sita, they are probably the copyist shows his ability, his skill in drawing also.
Protected by UNESCO, this collection is now maintained in a dedicated climate-controlled library. Despite this extra care, the manuscripts still require regular maintenance to prevent their deterioration. Every day, experts work tirelessly to restore life to these fragile pages. The most heavily damaged pages must first be repaired before the entire manuscript is treated with a citronella oil-based concoction, which both nourishes the pages and prevents the proliferation of insect larvae. After drying for 24 hours, they will return to the shelves of the library, and in doing so, soothe Dr. Ganesan's worried mind. Different versions of these texts have emerged over time, and each successive copy reveals its own variations, additions, or even orthographic errors that researchers at the Institute try to identify. It's a linguistic task across a winding maze of words that often requires the eyes of the Institute's oldest members. At 92 years old, this Brahmin comes into the library every day to study these ancient texts. He started copying them 50 years ago, comparing and noting the impressive body of Shivaite manuscripts during a time when copies were still made by hand.
I was initiated at the age of 20, and along with many of the other copyists, was entrusted with transferring the palm leaves onto paper. Very often the pages were left in disorder, and they had no page numbers. So before we could even copy them, we had to sort them out and put them in order. When we had doubts about a translation, we marked it and referred to the ancient texts. Reading and copying these manuscripts requires special training. For one, there's no punctuation, so they're hard to read. Naturally, the idea of reassembling these texts and formatting them into books is essential if we want to enable future generations to access this knowledge.
Dr. Ganesan has copied and inventoried the different versions of these texts in order to make them accessible beyond the circles of Shivite Brahmins and initiates. The Department of Indology at the Institute will also disseminate these teachings beyond India's borders, enabling students abroad to access their ancestral knowledge. In this way, the words of Shiva may continue dancing along the lips of his followers.
Gaum netratrayabhyam vashate gaha astraya phat vastra abharana madabhiralankritya samarchayet sakaladini berani snanam acharet gandha pushpai samabhyarchya